Okay, so the background on this story, The House on Mango Street, it's by Sandra Cisneros. So let's write that down. Sandra Cisneros. C-I-S Cisneros. Okay? She is an American, Mexican-American. She's still living today. She lives in a very affluent, artsy town in Mexico called I can't think of the name right now, San Luis Allende or something like that. But she didn't always live there, okay? And this story is a collection. This is the title of her book, The House on Mango Street. And she wrote it like, I don't know, maybe it's been 40 years now. She wrote it in graduate school when she was working on her literature degree, and it went on to sell like 20 million plus copies, taught in all levels of school based on what age group you're teaching it to. And the reason why I like it so much, A, what you can learn from it, obviously, and B, the writing style is so vivid and vibrant, and her use of the literary techniques like syntax, and repetition, and imagery, and similes, and diction is just amazing, and you'll see why. Okay, so we'll just get into it right now, then I might finish with the backstory. Okay, everybody see that? Yes? Okay. All right. We didn't always live on Loomis Street. Before that, we lived on Loomis on the 3rd floor, and before that, it was Paulina, and before that, I can't remember. I can't remember. But what I remember most is moving a lot. Each time it seemed there would be one more of us. By the time we got to Mango Street, we were 6. Mama, Papa, Carlos, Kiki, my sister Nenny, and me. Okay? So right off the bat, what do we know here? What do we know here?
You've got a pretty large family.
Large family. Every time they moved, it seemed like another baby was born. Okay? And so she's writing from first person. Okay? By using the word we. Okay? And then we have the repetition of before. Okay? So remember, we're writing our commentary. So this is a repetition of before. 1, 2. Oh, sorry. Thank you. Repetition. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, 4 times. Which creates a sense of urgency. Okay? Movement. Okay? This story is told from the first person. It's told from a little girl's point of view, probably in elementary school. Okay, and so her voice comes out in this through the use of the words and things like that, and we will see that. So right off the bat, we see that we didn't always live here, and that we moved at least 4 times. The house on Mango Street is ours, and we don't have to pay rent to anybody or share the yard with the people downstairs, or be careful not to make too much noise, and there isn't a landlord banging on the ceiling with a broom. But even so, it's not the house we thought we'd get. So right off the bat, she's telling us about dreams, isn't she? And hope. Okay? And those dreams and hope now, based on what we're seeing right here, are not coming true, are they? So, disappointment. Okay, so we're thinking about the tone. Hope, and then perhaps disappointment. Okay? We also have the repetition of the word or and or, which is also called an anaphora, remember? We looked at that in poetry, and it is the repetition of a word or words that begin each successive line or independent clauses, right? Or clauses. So we have here to pay rent to anybody, comma, or share the yard with people downstairs, or be careful. Okay, so we see that right there. Okay. We had to leave the flat on Loomis quick. The water pipes broke and the landlord wouldn't fix them because the house was too old. We had to leave fast. I want you to mark that. We were using the washroom next door and carrying water over in empty milk gallons. That's why Mama and Papa looked for a house, and that's why we moved into the house on Mango Street, far away on the other side of town. Okay, this is important. Okay, so they are leaving behind the familiar, aren't they? Okay, so I'm going to put up here, leaving behind the familiar. That's not always a bad thing, right? But we'll see what goes on. We also have here, I have marked it, we had to leave fast, okay? So there was no time to think about where they were going to move. They just got the first house that they could afford, which is minimal, as we will see, and they couldn't make a decision. And their dreams now are not coming true. And so that's the literary technique here of syntax. We had to leave fast. And of course, syntax is arranging the words on paper in order for maximum effect. So what she does throughout this is she creates long sentences using punctuation to string everything along, which shows movement of moving. Does that make sense? And then right tucked in the middle, you will have a very short sentence, as you will see even more, okay? And that is to create that sense of urgency, okay? Then they had to move away the far side on the other town. They always told us that one day we would move into a house, a real house, that would be ours for always, so we wouldn't have to move each year. And our house would have running water and pipes that worked. And inside it would have real stairs, not hallway stairs, but stairs inside the house like on TV. So we have our simile. And we'd have a basement and at least 3 washrooms, so when we took a bath, we wouldn't have to tell everybody. Our house would be white with trees around it, a great big yard and grass growing without a fence. This was the house Papa talked about when he held a lottery ticket. And this was the house Mama dreamed up in the story she told us before we went to bed. Okay, so stopping right here, I've marked white. Do you see that? I've marked fence, okay? Lottery ticket and dreamed up, okay? When we think of diction, okay, I want us to think about imagery. Here, white, a white house. What does that convey? A clean slate, yes. I like that. A clean slate, purity, innocence, right? Innocence, okay? Now, what's interesting to me here, she wants this house white, and I understand that. And she wants it, though, without a fence.
So like, they're free. Like, they're not locked into this certain place.
Yes, free and not locked in, and they are secure. They are secure. Most of us want fences, and we're boxed in for that. But she wants it without a fence because she wants to be free and secure in a neighborhood that she doesn't have to worry about crime and things. Do you see that? So it's the complete opposite of what we think. And then we see with the lottery ticket up here, that is a wishful. The chances of Papa ever getting that lottery ticket is like what? 1 in
a million.
Yes. And then Mama tells every night the kids the same story and describes this house. And so what we see here is that we have hope here. But it's a false hope, isn't it? And how do we know it's a false hope? Because she says here, we didn't always live on Mango Street. We had to leave fast and find a place. And here, right here at the very beginning, she sets us up. But even so, this house on Mango Street isn't the one that they told us about. So we begin to see a loss of innocence in this little girl. Okay? Because she's realizing her parents aren't always right. And when you realize that, you have to deal with that. Okay? So, but the house on Mango Street is not the way they told it at all. It's small and red, with tight steps in front and windows so small you'd think they were holding their breath. Bricks are crumbling in places, and the front door is so swollen you have to push hard to get in. There is no front yard, only 4 little elms the city planted by the curb. Out back is a small garage for the car we don't own yet. Hope, right? We don't own yet. She's hopeful. And a small yard that looks smaller between the 2 buildings on either side. There are stairs in our house, but they're ordinary hallway stairs. And the house has only 1 washroom. Everybody has to share a bedroom. Mama and Papa, Carlos and Kiki, me and Nenny. Once, when we were living on Loomis, a nun from my school passed by and saw me playing out front. The laundromat downstairs had been boarded up because it had been robbed 2 days before, and the owner had painted on the sign, "Yes, we're open," so as not to lose business. So before we get to the end, I want us to look up here again. And I want you to look at some of the words here that we've marked, okay, to show that imagery. She has a repetition of the word what?
Small.
Small. And then she also uses the word little, smaller, small. All right? So her world, I'm going to write this down, her world is small. Her dreams are big, though, right? And we have this picture of this dilapidated house nestled in between 2 buildings, not even in a neighborhood. They got it probably for nothing practically, right? And the door's so swollen from rain seeping in and things, and the tight steps, and then of course the color imagery, red. It's small and red. And when we think of red, when we're talking about imagery, color imagery, what comes to mind?
Love.
It comes to love, but is that used in this way?
Death.
No. It can mean death, yes. Death. And it's a death of what?
Death of
Your
their
innocence.
And innocence, right? Innocence. Death of dreams and innocence. Red. Which is the complete opposite of her white house that represents clean and purity that she wants one day, right? It's the complete opposite. So the tone of this piece is what? Is it dreams and hope, or is it disappointment and sadness? Yes. So it is disappointment and sadness. That is the major tone. Okay? All right. So now we're on Loomis Street, and that's before they had moved Keeler, what have you. Once, okay, a nun from my school passed by and saw me playing. Yes, we're open so as not to lose business. Where do you live? She asked. There, I said, pointing up to the 3rd floor. You live there? There. I had to look to where she pointed. The 3rd floor. The paint peeling. Wooden bars Papa had nailed on the window so we wouldn't fall out. You live there? The way she said it made me feel like nothing. There. I lived there. I nodded. So, syntax. With the word there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. 6 times there. Okay? Which is the literary device of syntax. Okay? One word for a sentence, or just one of a couple of words for emphasis, in addition to the idea of being italicized. It's the idea of being shocked. So the nun is shocked that this little girl is playing out front here. And so what we know is that she's probably, well, nun is Catholic, right? And what we see here is irony. And what is irony? It's when you think something's going to happen based on prior knowledge, and then the exact opposite happens. So the nun represents kindness, service, helping others, sacrifice, Christianity, but yet
She's rude.
yeah, she's rude, but she makes her feel like nothing. So she becomes, the little girl becomes ashamed of herself and her house. Okay? So she feels like nothing. She doesn't have anything to do with where she lives. She's a little girl. But the nun said it with such shock and probably a sneer, so unlike a nun should behave, that it sinks down into her bones and she takes it personally. So because she takes it personally, how do you think she's going to be when she grows up? Possibly more sensitive to criticism and things. She may struggle with her self-esteem, things like that. And so she's learning early on that things aren't always what they seem, right? So the nun who she thought was going to be kind turns out to be the opposite. And finally, she says, I knew then, a reality check. I had to have a house, a real house. One I could point to, but this isn't it. The house on Mango Street isn't it. For the time being, Mama says. Temporary, says Papa. But I know how those things go.
She knows now.
She's a smart girl.
She knows now, an early hard lesson to learn, that if she wants anything better in her life, she's going to have to work for it. Now that's a great lesson to learn. We need to know that we are the masters of our own destiny, right? We can create the world we want to live in. However, to learn that as a 7 or 8-year-old child, that's a heavy lesson to all of a sudden be awake enough or conscious enough to realize that this dream of a real house, a beautiful house in a safe neighborhood, is not going to happen, because we know that Papa somehow is never going to make enough money to handle it or to make it, right? Because he's hoping that he'll get the lottery ticket. And the mama is just telling stories, make-believe stories. And so now we have this little girl who has had to grow up too fast. Okay? And then we have, in order to see that, we have obviously the syntax of there, which creates that idea of shame. And then we have here, I knew then I had to have a house, period. In between that, a real house. Do you see that? A real house. 3 words, along with one I could point to. And again, this isn't it. Do you see that? This isn't it. The house on Mango Street isn't it. She repeats, isn't it, twice for emphasis. That no matter how they spin the tale, they're not going to get anything more. That their lives are settled right where they are. But she realizes, I am going to have something more. And I'm going to have to do it on my own one day. Again, not a bad, that's a good thing. But to learn it so young, it's sad to have lost that innocence so early. So Cisneros is a master at syntax in order to convey tone and meaning and to show us how this little girl is now disappointed in her parents and in this dream, and she has now become a realist. Also, I want to point out up here, and how I said, things are not always what they seem. So how do you think she's going to feel when she grows up? Is she going to be totally trusting?
No.
Not at all. Not at all. Because if this person, the nun, who represents sacrifice